We are so happy to have our panelists tonight, continuing our chef maker talks. So we have the two chefs from Naka, Iida-Nakayama and Carole Iida-Nakayama. And then from the studio MANO, it is Sekizawa and Correa. Iida-Nakayama and her partner and sous-chef Carole Iida-Nakayama are the team behind the Michelin-starred restaurant Naka near Culver City, specializing in modern Japanese kaiseki cuisine. Part of what makes Naka so special is their attention to customer experience, which led them to their 4th James Beard nomination in 2018 for both Best Chef West and Outstanding Service. The pair has been featured in Chef's Table, and we are so honored to have them here today. MANO is a custom object and furniture shop that is a collaboration between Los Angeles artists Correa, he's a fine art painter, and then Sekizawa, who studied in design and is also a photographer. Each piece is designed, built, and finished by hand in the MANO wood shop and studio, integrating fine art, media, design, and classic woodworking techniques. MANO is especially inspired by Mexican and Japanese cultural traditions. The first question is to Carole and Niki. Where did the concept of Naka begin, and what are the defining characteristics of the restaurant?
I actually had the idea for Naka back in the days when I had a small sushi restaurant on Melrose and La Brea. I was working probably 13 hours a day, and then just standing behind the counter and making sushi and in a regular restaurant. And then I was talking to a guest, and she's like, "You should just hang in there, because one day you can have a restaurant where you can only serve 10 people and you can do whatever you want." And then I thought, oh my God, that's a fantastic idea. Because the idea of making a menu and just serving whatever I want and not listening to what anyone else wanted was appealing. But that being said, I always dreamt of doing a restaurant that was serving kaiseki, because I had originally experienced that when I lived in Japan for about 3 years. And I always enjoyed how kaiseki celebrates nature and celebrates seasonality. It's such an idea and a cuisine of gratitude. And I thought that is an amazing approach to food. And for the guests who enjoy kaiseki, it's also kind of for me personally, it felt like I was unraveling little gifts with each course that I could get. And it was so celebratory. It felt like a wonderful expression of what food and dining could be. So Naka came about after I was ready to move on from the sushi restaurant, and it was just something that I felt that I could put all my dreams and hopes in, and if I build it, they will come.
And so they did. And then, so you mentioned kaiseki, would you give just a general rundown of what that means?
Sure. So kaiseki is the most formal way of dining in Japanese cuisine. It consists of multiple types of cooking methods that are brought together to highlight ingredients that are in season. So our jobs as chef is to pick the ingredient and decide which cooking method will best highlight that ingredient without altering it. And so it follows a certain progression that, for example, you do a soup course before you do a sashimi course, because the idea of the soup is to sort of cleanse your palate before you enjoy something really simple and light. So it's an overall menu that is constructed to feel like one big experience.
Fantastic. And my next question is for Mario and Zen. I know that there's a meaning behind MANO. Would you explain that, and then how you guys formed your company?
MANO means hand. La mano means hand in Spanish, and ya means shop. So we're a handmade shop. Mario's Mexican and Japanese, and I'm Japanese, so it kind of made sense to have this shop. And when Niki had approached us with the idea of the restaurant needing chairs, we decided to make them. We formed the shop around Niki's idea of making chairs.
I need chairs. And you're like, we'll make them. I was like, perfect.
I mean, I had been working with Niki for a long time. I've known her since the 10th grade. And, I've been taking pictures for Naka, and I'm helping with design and everything. So when she was floating the idea, about getting new chairs and doing a remodel for the restaurant. The chairs that were available were, I didn't think deserved to be in a naka. So it was a little bit of an emergency as well because the chairs that were in there really needed to be replaced. So I asked Mario if we could kind of buy some time by kind of fixing the chairs that were already there, just enough time so we can actually make 34 chairs?
34 chairs.
34 chairs and how many tables?
10 tables.
10 tables?
And the restaurant seats 30, and there are, you said 4 for spillover, I think you had mentioned before?
Yeah, at the bar, right? There's
Yes, yes. We actually seat 26, and then we have the extra. I'll talk about it. We have the extra just in case. We have people who come in larger groups, but they pretty much are. They either sit at the counter for people who come in a little earlier or stay a little later, and they're wonderful. They're the best chairs we've ever had.
It's true.
But it is a 3-hour meal. So I want to ask you too about both what the needs were from the restaurant and then how you guys addressed those.
So I worked for years building furniture sort of anonymously for designers who had custom furniture in their sort of purview. And when the Naka project came on, it's really what started it started our company and this endeavor into making things. Because it was this question of, first, can we do this? Like, are we able to do this? And for me, I also I had begun sort of collapsing my art practice in with the sort of day job shop making practice as well. But considerations for the restaurant. So we went to Naka, we experienced what it was eating there and realized, okay, you can't. And when we were trying to look for things initially, it's like none of this stuff is gonna work. It doesn't reflect what is actually happening in the restaurant.
we needed
Which is the long form meal, right? We wanted a chair that was not just a dining chair, but also something you can kind of like lounge in. So, and we also wanted to follow certain Japanese traditions. We wanted things to be kind of low. We wanted to use local ingredients, materials. We went for...
Yeah, could you talk about like the type of wood, like the selection of wood?
Yeah, we ended up using California black walnut, which is indigenous to Southern California, based on all of the sort of ideas that we were getting through Niki. She does a traditional Japanese dining experience, but not in the traditional way. And I think that's really important. Like Niki realizes that that she's not in Japan, she's here, so she wants to utilize everything that's available to her here to the best of its ability or to the best of its quality. And yeah, so we decided to go with walnut, even it's not a very sort of like traditional Japanese kind of like feel to it, although Japanese American George Nakashima is like made walnut his sort of like signature material, so there's that connection as well. And it's just finding those connections, having those considerations that really just follows that sort of process that Niki does for what comes out.
And it was really ingenious of you guys to think of the zabuton idea, because in Japanese seating, it's done, you sit on the floor, and then part of that relaxation process is you sit on cushions. So I was really impressed, we were both really impressed with Zen and Mario for having come up with a chair that resembled that zabuton feel and also insert cushions that made it feel like zabuton. And it was, everything we do at Naka is, it's Japanese, but then it's also not Japanese. And that's why we felt like it was such a perfect fit what he had built for us.
You also make serving boards, essentially the placemats, so many the sake cup holders. There's so many details in the presentation, and I want to know, for plating, how is that? What does that process look like? Because there is such a because everything is so considerate. What does that entail?
So for those of you that haven't been to naka, plating is a big aspect of what we do, and it kind of in line with kaiseki in general, where the visual presentation that's before you is just as important as the actual food itself. And our take on it, we do use some Japanese ceramics, we do use custom-made sake glass holders and a placemat that Mario had constructed. And the idea is, especially with the pieces that Mario presented, that is the first thing that a guest will see when they are seated at the table. And so what do we want the guest to feel? What do we want them to interpret from this blank slate basically before any food arrives? And I think it was ingenious because he was able to grasp the fact that in our cooking, as part of Japanese culture, there's this philosophy of not wasting. And we try and incorporate that throughout the kaiseki meal by taking scraps of, okay, this is a perfectly good A5 Wagyu that we're gonna have to cut these perfect medallions for the steak course for, but what happens to the rest of this wonderful meat that, because we're in this fine dining format, can't be served because it's not perfectly sliced? We incorporate that into an earlier course and kind of call that our table of contents, where it represents all these scraps from everything else that's coming later in the menu and presented in a different format. And so Mario was able to take that concept, use the waste wood from the chairs, and create this beautiful tray for us, which it has the napkin and the chopsticks and the place settings when you first arrive. So in a similar vein, it's kind of introducing you to the bigger philosophies behind what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that there are complications. Like I know for the bowl, that I was lucky enough to make a bowl for the restaurant. I know that like for the scallops, say people would see the height and be like, it was an extra consideration that working with a handmade object, that people would see it and be like, oh, you got a little more, even though you're serving the same amount of scallop. Were there any other considerations like that? Just what did the introduction of handmade mean in that sense?
I think what we've come to realize is it's natural with handmade elements for it to be not perfectly uniform with each and every piece. And I think that is the narrative that we have to explain to our guests, that is the reality of handmade products. And that is also where the beauty of those handmade products, where you find the beauty in it. Because everything is an expression of the moment of that one piece of that one time. And if we can express that and have people know that this moment is what it is and how it was created was a very specific timing. So when we explain that to the guests are able to appreciate those things about what is handmade. And I think that's it's very in line with what Japanese people say, ichigo ichie, which is you only meet one time, and that one time will never come again. And that is very special and very specific to that moment. So that can be applied to the craft that we do, like the pieces that we make. Of course, in an ideal world, it's always perfect, everything's exactly the same, but where's the beauty in that? It's not art.
It's interesting, Brendan Ravenhill, who also has stools right behind us, started his studio in practice in Los Angeles, working for a restaurant. How has your process expanded beyond that? And I just want to know like how working for a restaurant is also different than working for, say, a home.
I mean, the wear and tear is incredible. It's like time lapse. Like what happens at a naka in like a year is probably what happens to a chair in a lifetime or something. I think
that was an eye-opener, right?
That was a real eye-opener. I feel like with the naka though, like it's very special, like our relationship and our collaboration. And it's a special place because it's so small and space is so coveted. And, we made this tansu cabinet. Well, it first started as a room divider.
Yeah.
And then
that's a funny story about maybe working with these guys. So we had the new furniture in, and there was some leftovers from the first design. There was a room divider, this object that was a light that divided sort of one dining room with another, and we wanted to change it, and we kept feeding Niki and Carole these ideas to like very polite no response. and this went on for maybe almost a year probably.
It's funny, like, you've responded to many other things, but that one thing.
We didn't know what should go.
I know.
Something we were both like, all of us were ruminating on, and then finally Niki came with the idea that she wanted it to function. She wanted it to serve the service. She wanted a service station, and so we started thinking, how can we tackle this idea? And so we decided to make a piece that referenced traditional Japanese tansu cabinetry. And it serves as a room divider. It also serves as a sort of ikebana display on top of it. It opens from all these sides, and in every drawer there's silverware, there's trays, there's sake cup holders, there's sake cups for when guests come, they're met with a welcome drink. And so that comes out of this sort of feature cabinet, and that's one of the things that you first see when you come in too. And so it became this thing that we're really proud of making, and it wouldn't have come about if you would have taken our like early suggestions before really sort of realizing not only what you wanted, but what you needed and what would help the restaurant function. And it seems like that's the place we're always coming from, even now with our talks with Naka. And some of, like, for instance, some of those trays in the tansu weren't getting used. We went back to Naka, and then we noticed because we're always watching.
The service trays. Are you using them?
Because sometimes when we get great ideas, the ideas doesn't always like come together. And then sometimes when we're in the kitchen, it's like, we have this dish, what are we gonna do? And then both of us like, the trays, right? And then that's how then they come, and then we start utilizing them, and then slowly incorporate them into the service. It's never like, we have these trays, let's think about it from the beginning, how to use it. It's always like, it's there, and we know it's there, and then when the right time happens, when it's meant to be for something, it'll find its way to us.
Just a bunch of gorgeous building blocks. In terms of, on your end, in terms of commissioning the pieces, I know they mentioned that they would bring you designs. Is that always how it works? Do you ever go, I want this, or is it more, how does that work with working with the local artists, like actually selecting pieces?
I think it's very collaborative on many levels. It's hard to imagine a specific piece unless it's for a very specific conceptual idea. A lot of it is wonderful when artists bring things to us and we look at it and we can envision, we could utilize this for this or utilize this for that. And then when a piece allows you to imagine more things that can, for its possibility, I feel that is more in line with the work that we can do when we're working with artists. Because it's very easy to look at a dish and just think, that I can only use it for this. But that limits the beauty of that piece, because that piece in itself is art too. So the more we utilize it and the more creative we can be with it, the more people get to enjoy it. Yeah?
Amazing. And then you guys mentioned like the cultural importance, and like in your bicultural background and your monocultural background. The idea of like using traditional, both not materials, but traditional techniques. And can you describe like the yakisugi? How we have a beautiful plate board. I don't know, what would you?
It's like a serving platter.
A serving platter, and like how just what that process looks like. And
well, Niki texted me one night, one random night.
Probably like 3 a.m.
3 a.m. Burn wood. The burn wood. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she sent me a picture. And you didn't tell me it was yakisugi or anything.
I didn't know what it was.
Yeah,
I was like, it's burnt wood. It looks really great.
Burnt wood. So then I did some research on burnt Japanese wood, and then came to the, found a bunch of articles and things about the traditional form of yakisugi, which is burning cypress. It means to burn cypress, cedar, cypress. And it waterproofs it. It's antibacterial. It's anti-insect. It makes it's usually for
It's an architectural application.
And thank you. And
And what does the process look like?
you burn the wood.
You just burn it?
You burn the wood
Yeah,
a lot
with a torch and
with a
burn it.
torch, and then you scrub it a lot with a wire brush, and then you put oil on it. But every wood reacts differently. The amount of burning that happens, the amount of scrubbing. There's a lot of factors to it.
But it's also just so nice because it directly just references cooking, it references the meal. Like the other trays, so much of it is like framing what Niki's and Carole are gonna come up with the plating. Yeah, we do keep the design pretty minimal and open. So for the yakisugi piece, we're starting with a rectangular tray, and that was made specifically for this exhibition too. We knew that tray was gonna hold your stoneware, your ceramic piece, but we wanted something to offset it because it's sort of, this exhibition's beautiful, but you're kind of like, it takes it a little bit out of context, and so we wanted just to add a little more kind of texture and context rather than just having the bowl on the tray, because we didn't have the table and we didn't have other things that sort of everything that kind of like sets everything up. We had to like sort of improvise for this exhibition. I think it came out well because, it came from Niki's suggestion, first of all.
I mean, I think it'll go through a few other variations and renditions before it hits.
We have some prototypes, like the lamps in the window ended up being a table lamp, and then he removed the blue stripe from the one that's on there. So yeah, it's all about the process of working with restaurants as well, which is super interesting. Is there anything you'd like to say before we open up to questions? Do we have any questions?
Sir? Hi. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your insight and process with us. I'm really sort of struck by the idea and sort of emotion that you can put into a handmade object. Is there a handmade object you own at home, perhaps, that means a lot to you and would be willing to share a story about that, perhaps?
I mean, we own the chair. And I think, that chair does mean a lot to us because and it speaks to our relationship as friends. It speaks to our relationship as friends that work with each other, and I think it's really special. Like I think, and it speaks to our relationship going from being partners to now working with each other. I think I love that chair a lot, but it just means a lot. I think it's like this jump off point to a lot of different things.
Yeah, it sort of symbolizes a lot for us. This collaboration, all of us together, I think is a practice in sort of noticing what's around you, noticing what you have, rather than seeking out some sort of external factor. It's like, see what you have at your disposal in your environment.
Yeah, what's around you, and how can you use it?
I think, like at our restaurant, the fact that we have handmade furniture that is made by somebody so close to us, it feels very, very personal. And I think that's what we always try to communicate in the work that we're doing. Having your furniture at our restaurant really, really elevated the whole experience, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think people get a clearer sense of what we're doing in the kitchen when they sit on those chairs, when they walk in and they see the spread with the placemats and everything else.
The tables
the
and the
tables
chairs.
and yeah, I feel like it kind of resonates on a much bigger environmental scale, whereas before it was much more focused on that plate.
Right, and then there's so much, it feels very unique and very original. So that makes it sort of ties into the experience we want to try to communicate to our guests too. It's awesome.
How long have you had Naka open?
We are 8 years old.
Wow.
And yeah, we're gonna be 9 years next April. So it's been a good long run.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been there forever. No,
But it was truly with these chairs that you were including the more handmade.
Yes. Yes.
Like what is?
It was a turning point when we introduced Mario and Zen's work along with yours. It was like up until that point, we'd always just depended on manufacturers to produce products for us. And then when we were able to bring in their work and your works like yours into our restaurant, it just suddenly felt even more personalized. There's something very, very unique and special about what we're trying to say, and it's a lot more clear. The voices are clear.
Yeah, and that your piece too, it's about sort of like recognizing what's around you coming from our art background. There are lots of fine artists that are also working in the craft realm. They'll throw pottery on the side or whatever, but like knowing those people is important, and knowing those people and having those sort of natural connections, I think, comes through.
Yeah. And it's also working with people you actually genuinely love. It makes a big difference, and I feel like, I think Niki and Carole's restaurant is really about that. Like they're expressing so much gratitude and love, and they want you to truly enjoy that experience. And I feel like, I think it's only deserving for them to have special pieces. I want everything in there to be handmade. Yeah. Slowly.
It's clear you've really thought and wanted to provide that holistic experience. I guess 2 questions. One, how did you kind of find your space in Palms, choosing like a neighborhood that you said if you build it, they will come, which there isn't any other nice restaurant nearby. And 2, whenever I have something nice, I'm always nervous I'm going to break it because it's going to be a little klutzy, and when you're at a restaurant, you have all these beautiful pieces, and it's like the balance at home. It's like, ooh, do we only use it for special occasions, or do we want to have that beautiful stuff and make it my everyday thing? In previous generations, maybe you had the good china and the regular china. I feel like in our generation, we'll just have one. It's like, well, things are going to get chipped. But like, when you have stuff that's so special, how do you live with it at a restaurant?
The location was really funny because I'd been looking for a space for a naka for quite a bit, and it was, I saw it one day in an ad, and I went there, and I'm the type of person that just follows how I feel. So I saw the building, and I walked inside, and I was like, this is it. This feels like the right space for me. And aside from that, it also had parking, which is really miraculous in LA because nowhere you go has parking. And I thought this is a perfect situation. It's got the right amount of space. It's small enough so that I don't have to put many tables. I could just feed a certain amount of people that was within my control. And I had a friend that was living in that area, but I wasn't very familiar with it myself. But I just thought, hey, look, it's close to the 10, it's close to Culver City, it's close to Century City, it's close to everything. It's really easy access. So my thought process was really simple. It felt right and it looked right. So that's how I chose the location. And I thought, well, since it's going to be a very particular style of restaurant, if we were able and fortunate enough to get the word out what it would be, then people, in LA who are used to driving will come out and see us.
The second part of the question.
Wear and tear.
The wear and tear.
tear.
It is difficult at times because we do about 50 people a night. So for each seating, we pretty much have a set 26 to 30 pieces of any particular plate or whatnot, and we only have one dishwasher because of our space limitations. And so he has a lot of dishes, to wash by himself. And that's not including, one other guy who just solely focuses on the beautiful wine glasses and sake glasses, the glassware. So I think through the years, we've kind of just accepted that that's just part of the cost of doing business. And it's one of those things where it hurts when you just bought this beautiful, handmade custom piece, and not that they're not trying to be careful, but sometimes they get rushed and things do break, or sometimes a guest just might have had too much wine and knocked something over. So it's heartbreaking, but
we always say that the overall enjoyment of the piece outweighs the loss of it. Like if you have something beautiful and you just keep it in a glass box and no one ever gets to enjoy it fully or like experience it for what it was meant to be, then that's wasting the life of it. So even if we get to use it once, right, and it cracks, at least that one person who got to experience it enjoyed it. Right?
yeah. And also it kind of forces us to keep looking for new things
Oh, I love
pretty
shopping.
constantly.
This is the worst part. It's like filling out of everywhere. And
Yeah.
You could
we
have
have
like
guests.
a good garage sale.
Right, like, the
Because you
guest
have
always
like,
asking, what do you do with all these dishes? And so I was like, I don't know, but I'm just gonna order more.
Our staff takes quite a few home every few years. We're like, okay, we have 3 of these left. Who wants them?
Well, it's a really interesting juxtaposition of an ephemeral art of like the food with the more stable things, but then also to realize that these objects are to be used, and both, whether it's with the taste buds or with touch, it's a very tactile experience, and it's just a really beautiful synthesis of the two, I think. Yeah.
So going off of that, I mean, you talked about yakisobe, and sort of like, you guys said you use a lot of fermented foods, a lot of aged foods. So, there's a lot of breakage and stuff, but is there anything that's sort of survives since day one that has a lot of charm to it, a lot of character to it, whether it's, the plates or the chairs, and you mentioned there's a lot of wear and tear on the chairs. Could you kind of talk about sort of the positive aspects of that aging, and whether it's in the food process or the design?
That's a hard one.
I'm trying to think
What we have that's there.
Because stylistic.
Oh, the
that's
door.
true. The door. Yes.
It's because we never come through the front. We're always going from the back.
Get that door.
Right? We never see the door. Talk about the door.
well, the door, I think is the only thing that has aged gracefully that we haven't decided to try to change in the future, right? I mean, there was a little bit of talk about fixing the door, but then I think it patinaed really nicely.
Even though it's a wood piece, right?
It's a,
It's kind of warped a little bit, and Mario kind of helped us fix it after the heavy rains we had last winter, right?
But the natural aging process of it has been a beautiful thing to witness. Like it started out really beautifully, like stained and varnished, and then over the years it's gotten like little sheens of blue and just like little, it's its own thing now.
Yeah, that can guide the design too, I think. What's exciting about that yakisobe technique is that it changes over time. So that patina that it gets, it's always going to be in flux, and it weathers the wood in a attractive way. So there's almost like, and that's a thing I think about too, where even with the chairs, they get nicked up, but that it's such a, I think that chair design is such a thick sort of thing in parts that it handles its like nicks pretty well. And I've noticed like, because they're all the same height and everything, I've noticed we've gone to the restaurants and there'll be marks from them hitting each other, but they're like kind of regulated. They're kind of nice. Like they're not something where you're like, oh, this is ruined now. Now I've got to refinish it. It's kind of like, yeah, I think this thing's
Kind of
wear
like
nicely.
urushi, like the Japanese art craft of like wood painting. It's like the longer you use it, the different colors that come through from it. It shows its age, it shows its wear and tear, but it also shows the beauty of it. So that's another kind of appreciation.
Is the door the only thing, kind of? We haven't touched since day one?
The door and the counter.
Oh, the counter.
Yeah, the counter.
They all just go deep into thought. The counter. Yeah.
Your restaurant was my first kaiseki experience. Thank you. But I have since had the experience of having kaiseki in Japan, and what I noticed was all of the objects, there's such a deep history of ceramics there. And so you're feeling, stuff through Rita and Mari and all these things. So I wondered if you purposefully stayed away from those objects that are so steeped in that history, because there's a certain freshness with the objects that you use with the food that maybe speaks about a modern LA. It is not like, I don't want to say embedded in that. So you made that decision purposefully to have this sort of like clean, urban, in the objects that you.
Yeah, I think it's partially just because neither of us have a deep, deep background in the ceramics of Japan. When we do look at food that we're studying with the kaiseki histories, there's certain distinctions where it's like you look at a particular plate and you know that this plate was intended for a particular cooking method presentation. A lot of Japanese food is like that, where there's shapes and colors and things that pertain to specific course. And so for us, because our food, even though it follows the kaiseki formats and tries to honor certain traditions about kaiseki, we don't ever want to tie ourselves to things that feel confining in that traditional sense, because our food should never really confine us.
Right.
But if we want to truly continue to grow and express, we take those traditions and figure out new ways of creating. And so I think part of it is because we don't want to feel confined by, aritayaki is this representation, and it has a very distinct look to it, and we're not opposed to using more traditional. I think it's just the way we like to plate, the way we like to present isn't weighed down by that tradition, and we don't want.
It also takes a long time to disassociate what that visual traditional look of a dish can be. For example, as Carole was saying, like when you look at a dish and you know that that's specifically made just for a grilled fish. So to not see a grilled fish on it takes a long time in my mind, like when I look at it, it's like it's grilled fish, right? But like after a time, if I just keep staring at it, or maybe have it somewhere in the cabinets and just, we could maybe put something like that on that's not a grilled fish, and it no longer looks like a grilled fish plate to me. So even when we're trying to pick out dishes that maybe do come from Japan, it's like we look at it, it's like, God, that just looks like you have to put nimono on it, or you just have to put certain things on it, and that's not how we cook. So it takes a while to step back from that and then disassociate and then see something different in it.
Is it more dependent on the ingredient? So like you're working with local.
Right, it depends on the ingredient, and it also depends on how we want to represent those ingredients with all the local things that we have, because we do tend to use foliage that is California, and then it might not necessarily look right, but we just have to find that balance where it works, where yes, we're bringing in traditional, but that traditional also speaks something moving forward.
Can I ask a follow-up? So do you have moments where you have to purge, like to keep it so fresh and new? Like, we gotta get rid of these dishes we've served.
All the time, which is a nightmare for our whole staff. They're like, you just bought these. I was like, I can't see anything new in it right now. I'm an artist. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's great. It's kind of like, I always say and make fun of myself in ways that, I don't really shop for clothing. I don't shop for anything, but I shop for dishes. So the purging of the dishes is it feels very rewarding, because it's like, that means we've moved on from this and we can bring in new ideas. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of dishes that we're very tied to in spite of the fact that we've had them for so long, because it's just it could be a piece that's just always evolving with us. So that's really nice too.
Well, thank you so much for being here and having this beautiful discussion. It's truly an honor. You've created something really special in Los Angeles, and we're happy that we could showcase another form of beyond wood, metal, glass, like that we could showcase this here. So thank you so much. And we will have a reception next door at Freehand. So thank you everyone for coming out.
Yeah, thank you.